Tonight, there is nowhere you need to be except aboard a quiet train, traveling slowly toward the sea. If you would like to, let your body soften a little now. Let your shoulders loosen. Let your jaw rest. And as the night settles around you, imagine that you have arrived at a station just after midnight, in a mountain town where the lamps still burn low and gold, and rain has begun to fall in a fine silver veil across the platform. There is no rush here, no noise that asks anything of you, only the soft hush of rain, the distant murmur of wheels somewhere far down the line, and the deep, untroubled feeling that for the rest of the night you are being carried gently onward. The station is almost empty when you arrive. Its old stone walls hold the day's warmth no longer, and the air feels cool and clean, touched by rain and a hint of pine from the dark slopes above the town. Overhead, an iron-framed roof shelters part of the platform, and beneath it, golden lanterns hang at measured intervals, casting circles of light over the wet ground. The rain has made everything quieter. Your footsteps sound softened on the stone. The few other travelers nearby move without hurry, as though they too understand that the late trains belong to a gentler rhythm than the rest of the world. A porter wheels a cart somewhere in the distance, its metal frame giving a faint and polite rattle before falling silent again. At the far end of the platform, the train waits. It is long and dark and elegant, with warm windows glowing softly along its side like a string of lanterns. Its polished body reflects the rain and station light in blurred ribbons of amber and black. A pale curl of steam drifts low and dissolves into the mist that has gathered between the tracks. You pause for just a moment to look at it. This is the last train of the night to Starfall Harbor, and though it is an ordinary fact, spoken on signs and tickets and old timetables, tonight it feels almost ceremonial, as if the world has become smaller and quieter, and this one train, waiting patiently in the rain, is the only thing still moving through it. In your hand is a cream-colored ticket, its edges slightly softened from being kept in a coat pocket. The ink has darkened faintly where one raindrop touched it a moment ago. The destination is written in careful lettering. Starfall Harbor. The name itself feels restful. You make your way along the platform, beneath the hanging lamps, until you reach the sleeping car. A conductor stands beside the open door in a dark coat with brass buttons that catch the light. He has the composed expression of someone who has worked these late routes for many years and has never once found a need to hurry. When he sees your ticket, he gives a small nod and steps aside. "Compartment 7, he says, his voice low enough that it hardly disturbs the air. You thank him and step up into the train. Inside, the world changes at once. The station rain remains outside, a soft blurred presence beyond the glass, while within the carriage there is warmth, wood, and a muted stillness so complete that it seems almost prepared in advance. The corridor is narrow and lined with dark polished paneling. Brass fixtures gleam softly at the corners. Along the wall, shaded lamps cast a honey-colored light that leaves every surface calm and gentle to the eye. The carpet beneath your feet is thick enough to hush each step. Now and then, from somewhere farther down the carriage, you hear the quiet close of a door, or the delicate clink of porcelain being gathered from an evening tray. But mostly there is only the peaceful feeling of a place already settling into sleep. You find compartment 7 and slide the door open. Inside is a small private room, arranged with a kind of thoughtful simplicity that feels immediately comforting. A velvet seat in deep blue runs beneath the window. Above it, a folded blanket waits, soft and neatly brushed. A brass lamp glows on the wall, its light dim and amber, not bright enough to wake the mind, only to warm it. A polished wooden shelf runs below the window, just wide enough for a book, a teacup, and a pair of gloves. The glass itself is stippled with rain, and beyond it the platform lanterns shimmer in soft gold lines. You set your things down. Your coat hangs on a brass hook. Your ticket rests beside the lamp. The compartment is small, but it does not feel narrow. It feels contained, in the way a nest or a cabin feels contained. Everything has its place. Everything suggests that the world outside can be set down for a while. You sit by the window. The velvet seat gives slightly beneath you. Somewhere below, deep in the body of the train, there comes a gentle mechanical murmur, then stillness, then another low stir, as though the train itself were waking slowly and stretching before the journey ahead. Outside, the rain continues to lace the glass. Across the platform, a clock marks the passing minutes with patient indifference. A traveller in a dark hat disappears into another carriage. A station lamp flickers once, then holds steady. Then, with almost no drama at all, the train begins to move. There is no sudden jolt, only a subtle shift in weight, a soft drawing forward. The platform begins to slide past the window as if carried away by water. Lantern after lantern drifts by, casting long reflections across the rain-streaked glass. The station roof gives way to the open night. Stone walls, signal posts, and the last warm lights of the town pass quietly into the dark. The train has left, and you are on your way to the sea. For a little while, the town remains beside you. Rows of windows glow through the rain, sloping roofs shine black in the midnight weather. A bakery with darkened windows, a square with a fountain barely visible in the mist, a bridge of old stone under which a narrow stream slips away unseen. Then the last houses thin out, the road curves elsewhere, and soon there is only countryside. The train moves through a world that seems almost entirely made of shadow, rain, and distance. The mountains rise in long dark folds beyond the glass. Pine woods gather close and then recede. Here and there, a farmhouse lamp burns faintly against the hillside, a lone square of gold in a field of blue-black night. The rhythm of the wheels settles into something steady and soothing. Not loud, not insistent, just a repeated pattern beneath everything, quiet enough that it does not call for attention, only gently supports it. The rails hum. The carriage sways so slightly you feel it more as a reassurance than a motion. Rain threads downward on the window in glistening paths, joining and separating again. You could watch those lines for a very long time. And perhaps you do. Because time on a night train moves differently, it loosens its grip. It no longer feels necessary to measure anything too closely. One village passes, then another, a stand of dark fir trees, a meadow silvered with rain, a river crossed by a low iron bridge, its surface briefly catching the lamplight from the carriage before vanishing once more into night. After some time, there is a quiet knock at the compartment door. When you open it, an attendant stands there holding a tray. He is older, with kind, composed eyes, and the manner of someone who has mastered the art of moving softly through sleeping spaces. On the tray is a teapot, a single porcelain cup, and a small dish with 2 plain biscuits. "For the journey," he says. You thank him, and he sets the tray carefully on the wooden shelf beneath the window. Before he leaves, he glances toward the lamp. "Would you like the light lowered later on?" he asks. The question is asked so gently that it feels like part of the comfort of the train itself. You tell him that perhaps later, and he gives a small nod. "We reach the harbor toward dawn," he says, "plenty of time to rest before then." And with that, he is gone, the door closed again with barely a sound. The teapot is warm in your hands. When you pour, a quiet thread of steam rises into the amber light. The tea is mild and fragrant, something between black tea and herbs, with a clean warmth that spreads slowly through you. Outside, the rain keeps its own company on the glass. Inside, the compartment feels even smaller now, but in the best possible way, sealed off from haste, held inside wood and wool and the steady song of the rails. You take a biscuit, then another sip of tea. There is no need to think ahead, no need to do anything but sit and listen, and allow the journey to unfold around you at the pace it has chosen for itself. After a while, you notice how many shades of darkness exist beyond the window. The blue darkness of open fields, the softer darkness of mist, the dense darkness of pine woods, and, now and then, the sudden warm interruption of a lone cottage lamp. Each appears for a moment and then recedes, leaving the rain to draw its patient silver lines across the glass again. At length, curiosity invites you into the corridor. You slide the compartment door open and step softly into the warm, narrow passage. The carriage sways ever so slightly beneath your feet. Along one side, the windows are dark mirrors, broken now and then by passing lamps or the faint wash of rain-lit countryside. Along the other are closed doors, each holding its own small pocket of rest. You walk slowly, not because there is far to go, but because the corridor itself seems to encourage a gentler tempo. Brass coat hooks, framed route maps under glass, A polished shelf holding 3 old travel guides with worn spines, a vase secured in a wall bracket with 2 late white flowers still fresh despite the hour. From one compartment comes the soft turning of a page. From another, only silence. Somewhere farther away, perhaps in the dining car, porcelain touches porcelain with a sound so light it hardly seems to happen at all. At the end of the corridor, near the vestibule, there is a wider window. You pause there and look out. The train is curving along the side of a mountain now. Far below, through the rain and dark, you can just make out a scattering of lights from some sleeping settlement tucked into the valley. Above, the shape of the ridge disappears into mist. The whole landscape feels hushed, as though the weather itself has folded a blanket over it. You remain there for a little while, simply watching the lights appear and disappear, one cluster giving way to darkness, then another single lamp, then the brief pale ribbon of a road that glistens and is gone. The wheels below you continue their patient song. The glass is cool near your hand. The world outside appears not so much empty as deeply at rest. When you return to your compartment, the tea is still warm. The lamp still glows, and the seat by the window welcomes you back with quiet familiarity, as if you had been gone much longer than a few minutes. You draw the blanket over your knees. It is heavier than it first appeared, woven thick and soft, carrying the faint, clean scent of cedar and soap. The train continues onward through the rain, and little by little the outside world becomes even simpler. Now there are fewer villages, longer intervals of darkness between one distant light and the next. Occasionally the train passes a signal lamp or a watchman's hut, but mostly it moves through open country and forest, over unseen streams, between hills and across lonely stretches of land that seem made only for moonlight and weather. This is the middle part of the journey, the quietest part, the part in which nothing much changes, and because nothing much changes, the mind finds less and less to hold on to. The wheels repeat their pattern. Rain gathers, slips and falls. The lamp keeps its golden circle. The tea grows cooler in the cup. The compartment rocks in a motion so slight that it feels almost like breathing. And perhaps that is all the story needs for a while. Perhaps it is enough simply to remain here, in this moving room of wood and velvet and warm light, while the world outside drifts by unasked. If thoughts have followed you into the night, they need not travel farther now. Let them stay behind at one of the stations already passed. Let them fade into the fields. Let them dissolve into the rain on the glass. There is a peculiar kindness in being carried somewhere while doing nothing at all. You do not need to steer. You do not need to choose the route. You do not need to know the names of the small villages sleeping beyond the hills, or the rivers beneath the bridges, or the forests waiting in the dark. The train knows the way. The tracks have long since decided it. All you are asked to do is rest and go gently onward. And so the journey deepens. The rain grows finer, less a shower now than a soft, continuous veil, and the window holds the blurred reflection of the lamp beside the faint procession of the night outside. At times, the train seems to be crossing empty uplands where no house stands for miles, only wet grass lying flat beneath the weather and old stone walls threading over the hills, like lines remembered from some earlier century. At other times, the track runs close to trees, and their dark trunks pass in a measured sequence that almost resembles the turning of pages. Once, for a few moments, the clouds thin and a pale wash of moonlight touches a reservoir below the line, turning its surface to dim silver before mist closes over it again. You do not need to hold any of these sights for long. They are beautiful because they pass so gently, leaving behind only the feeling of having seen them. The train enters a stretch of woodland where the branches reach close to the line, and for a time the window becomes a slow-moving tapestry of wet bark, dark needles, and occasional glints of reflected lamplight. Then the trees fall away and the land opens once more. A cluster of sheep stands in a field beside a stone barn. A gate shines pale for a second and vanishes. A road runs parallel to the tracks for a little while, empty except for rainwater gleaming in its shallow ruts. Inside the compartment, the warmth seems to gather more densely around the lamp. Your teacup cools by degrees. The blanket settles more heavily across your knees. The train's motion, once noticeable, has become almost abstract. more like a steady reassurance than a physical fact. If you close your eyes for a moment, you could believe yourself already halfway asleep, held between the remembered movement of the carriage and the soft constancy of the rain. Time becomes generous here. Minutes are no longer made of duties or clocks or decisions. They are made of repeating comforts: the low golden lamp, the cool dark window, the muffled rhythm of the wheels, the faint scent of tea, wood and rain. Beyond the glass, the country continues to unfold in calm succession. A ruined wall, a distant chapel tower, a narrow brook running beside reeds, a field of wet grass bent all one way by the wind. Then darkness again, and then another small sign of life, enough to remind you that the world is still there, but far enough away that it asks nothing of you. The train passes over a longer bridge. You do not see much below, except a broad dark suggestion of water and the faint broken reflections of the carriage lights trembling between rain ripples. Then the bridge is gone, and the wheels return to the familiar tone of earth and rail. Somewhere in the distance, perhaps from a farm or some unseen station house, a single lamp burns with patient endurance. It hangs for a moment in the night, like a thought you need not finish. At another point, the train rounds a bend and reveals its own length ahead of you, a graceful curve of warm windows moving through darkness and mist. The sight is visible only briefly before the line straightens again, but it is enough to make the whole journey feel self-contained and safe, as though you are tucked inside a long lantern-lit thread being drawn carefully through the sleeping landscape. And still the night goes on, not empty but untroubled, not silent but hushed, not still but gently, continuously moving forward. After a time that is impossible and unnecessary to measure, you become aware that the train has changed its character slightly. The motion remains calm, but the track seems smoother now, the curves broader, the spaces between distant lights longer and more open. You set your teacup down and listen. The wheels no longer echo quite so closely from mountain stone or wooded embankment. The sound has widened. It carries beneath the carriage with a softer, hollower tone, as though the land beside the rails has opened into flatter country. Curiosity rises once more, not sharp enough to disturb the quiet, only enough to invite you gently from your seat. You leave the blanket folded where it is and step into the corridor again. The lamps along the passage have been turned a little lower since your last walk, and the whole carriage seems to float in a more private kind of night. The brass fittings gleam less brightly. The shadows are longer. Somewhere beyond the next door, a sleeper has settled fully, and the silence there is so complete that it feels almost visible. You move toward the farther end of the carriage, where a door stands half open to a small shared sitting room you had not noticed before. It is not grand, only simple and old-fashioned. Arranged with two upholstered benches, a narrow shelf of books fixed against the wall, and a larger window looking out over the passing dark. No one is here now. A reading lamp with a pleated shade burns low in one corner. On the shelf, a chessboard has been folded shut and left beside a stack of travel journals with worn cloth covers. The room feels as though it has been waiting quietly for whoever might come to sit in it without speaking. You take the seat nearest the window. From here, the view is wider than from your compartment, and the world outside opens before you in slow, generous intervals. The train is crossing Marshland now, or some broad, wet plain near the coast, where water lies in long, dark channels between reeds and flat fields. The rain has nearly ceased. In its place, there is mist, low and silver, spreading over the ground in drifts that catch what little light remains. Pools of standing water reflect the faint sky. Thin fences, almost lost in the dimness, divide one stretch of land from another. A distant windmill, long unmoving, appears for a moment as a deeper shade against the pale horizon, then slips away. It is a different kind of beauty from the mountains. There, the night held close around the train, gathered into slopes and pines and valleys. Here, the night feels wider and more spacious. The land seems to breathe in longer measures. The sky, though still dark, no longer presses so near. Even the mist appears to move more slowly, as though it has all the remaining hours before dawn in which to drift across the reeds. Now and then, the train passes over narrow causeways where water comes almost level with the line, and for a few seconds the reflected carriage lights travel beneath you in wavering amber ribbons. Once you glimpse a rowboat tied at a post, half hidden among reeds. Once a cluster of cottages rises on a low bank, their windows dark, their chimneys pale against the thinning clouds. Once you see a church tower standing alone beyond the flats, with no village near enough to explain it, only the suggestion of a road leading away into mist. Each sight appears with the softness of a dream and leaves just as gently. On the small table beside the bench lies a book someone has left behind, face down and half closed, as though the reader had paused only for a minute and never returned. Its cover is dark green cloth, faded at the corners. Beside it is a glass tumbler with a little water still at the bottom, catching the light from the shaded lamp. These quiet traces of other travelers make the room feel even more restful. They suggest no interruption, only the calm existence of others somewhere else in the train, sleeping as the journey continues steadily onward. You sit there a little longer, watching the marshland pass. The reeds bend and lift in the faint breeze. Waterbirds stand motionless in the shallows, white and ghost-like in the dimness, then vanish behind the frame of the window before you can decide whether they were truly there. A low wooden footbridge crosses one dark channel. Far beyond it, a line of trees marks the edge of slightly higher ground. Everything appears hushed, spread out, and patient. If the mountains taught the night how to gather itself, these flats teach it how to rest. Somewhere beneath the floor, the train changes tracks with a gentle sequence of muted knocks, then settles once more into its long, smooth rhythm. The lamp beside you hums almost too softly to hear. In the glass, your own reflection is faint and indistinct, dissolved into the night outside until it is impossible to separate one darkness from another. It feels less as though you are looking out at the landscape than as though the landscape itself has come close and laid a quiet hand against the moving train. At last you rise and return to your compartment. The familiar small room receives you again with lamplight, blanket, and the remembered scent of tea. You sit, draw the blanket back across your knees, and feel at once the particular comfort of returning to a place made gentle by repetition. The window seems smaller after the sitting room, but also more intimate, like a second shelter within the first. Outside, the wider flats continue to pass in silence, their water and reeds and scattered lights now softened by the frame of your own compartment window. You do not need to go looking any farther. The journey will come to you. Eventually, as all long nights do, this one begins to change. Not suddenly, only by degrees so small they are felt before they are seen. The darkness outside the window grows less complete. The rain softens until it is only an occasional shimmer on the glass. The shapes beyond the compartment begin to separate into clearer forms. Low hills, stone walls, stands of bare-limbed trees, and fields lying pale beneath the last hour before morning. Somewhere in the distance, though not yet visible, there is the sea. You know it first by suggestion, by a subtle openness in the horizon, by the feeling that the air beyond the window has widened. And then, when you lower the window just slightly, there it is at once, a cool thread of salt in the air, mingling with rain and iron and the fading warmth of the compartment. The harbour cannot be far now. The train begins to slow. The change is gentle but unmistakable. The rhythm of the wheels lengthens. The carriage no longer glides with the same seamless constancy, but yields to a slower, softer measure. Outside, lights begin to appear again, not scattered farmhouse lights this time, but lanterns arranged in lines and clusters reflected in dark water. You sit a little straighter beneath the blanket and look out. The first shapes of Starfall Harbor arrive through mist. Stone quays, masts standing pale and still against the dim sky. Rows of sleeping boats with their reflections trembling in the harbour basin. A bell tower farther off, its outline softened by morning haze. Warehouses of old timber and stone, still dark at this hour. And along the platform ahead, low lamps burning with that same patient gold that lit the mountain station hours before, as though the whole journey had been stitched together by a single continuous thread of light. The train moves carefully now, as if it too respects the quiet of the harbour before dawn. You feel the last small turns of the wheels, the final easing of motion, and then the almost imperceptible moment when movement becomes stillness. You have arrived. But there is no need to rush the ending. No one is calling you out into the cold blue morning just yet. The compartment remains warm. The lamp still glows. The blanket lies heavy and comforting across your knees. Outside, harbor mist drifts slowly past the window, and somewhere not far away, a rope taps softly against the mast of a boat. You can stay here for another moment, or for many. You can imagine the porter not yet come down the platform, the station not yet fully awake, the town beyond the harbor still sleeping behind shuttered windows, the bakery fires not yet lit, the boats at rest in their berths, the gulls quiet, the sea breathing in long, untroubled rhythms just beyond sight. This is the gentlest part of arrival. Not stepping out, not gathering your things, but resting in the knowledge that the journey is complete and nothing more is required of you. You have crossed the mountains in rain and darkness. You have sat in warm lamplight while villages and forests slipped softly by. You have listened to the rails carry you farther and farther from whatever waited behind you. And now, before dawn, at the edge of the sea, there is only stillness. If you like, let that stillness settle around you now. Let the compartment become quieter still. Let the lamp dim lower in your imagination. Let the harbor mist thicken outside the glass until the whole world is reduced to softness, distance, and rest. Perhaps the blanket grows a little warmer. Perhaps your eyes grow a little heavier. Perhaps the sounds that remain are only these: the faint creak of cooling wood, the hush of faraway water, and your own breathing, slow and even, in the small, calm room that carried you safely through the night. There is nowhere else to go now, no station to catch, no hour to watch, no task waiting at the next stop. The journey has already brought you where you needed to be. So rest here, in the quiet compartment at Starfall Harbor, while dawn gathers somewhere beyond the mist and the sea keeps its patient rhythm below the window. Rest here a little longer, and because there is no reason to rise yet, your attention can wander softly through the harbor beyond the glass. You can imagine the long stone quay beaded with moisture from the night, the damp ropes coiled neatly beside sleeping boats, the dark hulls rocking so gently that the water scarcely notices. Somewhere beyond the station walls, narrow streets are still empty. A sign above a closed chandlery stirs once in the early breeze. The shutters of an upstairs room remain closed against the pale approach of morning. Farther up the hill, a row of houses faces the sea in complete silence, each roof silvered faintly by mist. Nothing asks to be done. Nothing needs to begin just yet. In a little while, bakers will light their ovens. Harbor workers will cross the square in heavy coats. A gull will call from a chimney pot, and another will answer from a mast. A lamp will be extinguished in a watchroom by the water. The first cart of the day will rattle over the stones. But for now, all of that belongs to another hour, one that has not fully opened. You remain in the warm pause before it, held between the finished journey and the waking day, and there is something deeply restful in that suspended moment. Perhaps the compartment seems even kinder now than when you first entered it in the mountain station. The lamp is lower, the blanket has gathered your warmth, the air still carries a trace of tea and polished wood and the clean mineral scent left by rain. The window is cool beneath your fingertips. If you close your eyes, you can still feel the remembered motion of the train, a ghost of its rhythm continuing somewhere beneath stillness, as though the journey has not ended so much as softened into rest. It is easy to imagine remaining here until sleep arrives completely, quietly, without effort. And if sleep comes, let it come as gently as the train itself came into the station. Unhurried, certain, soft as rain on glass, soft as lamplight on polished wood. Soft as the last long mile of track before the harbor. Let the sea keep watch outside. Let the mist veil the morning a little longer. Let the harbor remain dim and distant and kind. Good night.